I started.
It's okay.
Come on, Dale.
Okay, we ready? Nick, we're good? All right, thank you all. It is officially a little after 6:30, 6:31. We're going to go ahead and get started. For those who are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have our entire team here, so I will call this meeting to order. Dr. Roberts, if you would.
Certainly. Thank you, Mrs. Wilden. We always start our school board meetings just reflecting on our mission, vision, and core values. Our mission, we develop expert learners by partnering with our community to invest in people. And our vision is for BCSC to be the choice to learn, work, and play. The 6 core beliefs, which we attempt to follow each day. We all can rise to the challenge of high expectations. Learning is most effective when we have choice, flexibility, and see relevance. We thrive when our physical, social, and psychological needs are met. Our community and school district are stronger when we partner with one another. We flourish because of the diversity and variability in our community, and our democracy and democratic institutions are strengthened by civic-minded citizens.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. I think first today we have United Way.
We do. So we have some United Way guests here. If they could step up with me. So each year, the United Way has a campaign that so many entities throughout our community participate in, and BCSC is very much an active participant in trying to raise as much money for United Way as is possible. And we have a check to present, a big check, literally, like it's really big, like here. So I'll present this to you. This year's check is in the amount of $26,868.51, and this again is throughout our corporation, from student-led projects to staff-led projects to our administration building getting involved and chipping in some dollars as well. So on behalf of BCSC, I'm proud to give you United Way this check. You're welcome.
Awesome.
So I am Sarah Davis. I am the Resource Development Director with United Way of Bartholomew County, and I'm honored by the generosity and the hard work of BCSC staff and students in making their annual United Way campaign a super success this year. The funds raised will significantly impact the 1 in 3, struggling families in our community, ensuring that vulnerable children and their families have the support they need to thrive. United Way of Bartholomew County envisions a community where every child is supported in and outside of the classroom. Together, we can create lasting solutions. So thank you to BCSC for your partnership in helping lift families in Bartholomew County out of poverty. And may we all live united by giving, advocating, and volunteering. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. With the slide that we have up here, we mentioned in our core beliefs that we are stronger when we partner with one another, and we just appreciate United Way's partnership with so many of us within the community, and glad to be a part of that. And Corinne, could you please stand? Corinne Sandusky was one of the leaders for us with the United Way work, and it's her first time doing it for us, so thank you so much, Corinne. Thank you.
Nice. All right, I think next item is best practice sharing from CSA Lincoln. Mr. Finley?
How about now? All right. Thank you, Dr. Roberts and the school board. And my name is Brett Finley. I'm the principal at CSA Lincoln. Our motto is work hard, play hard. It's unofficial, but we try to live by it. And there's some general information about our school. We're 26% economically disadvantaged. There's 20% of our students with disabilities. We're one of the 11 elementary schools that received the Purple Star for their service to our veterans and their families, and in 2021 we were a National Blue Ribbon School Award winner, and it was for closing the achievement gap, and much of what I'm presenting today is really tied directly to that as well. So I'm going to talk to you about a program called Beyond the Bell, and it's actually called free after-school programming for all students. And I'd like to say that this is a CSA Lincoln kid, but it's just a template I found online. But what I love about this template, she is cute, and she's probably about a year or two young to be in kindergarten. But what I love about this is that it kind of puts into our good framework of what we're trying to achieve. Our elementary kids are going to spend 7 years with us. If they're in pre-K, that's 8. That's more than they'll spend in the secondary, but our ultimate goal is to set a great foundation for graduation. And so that's kind of a good piece of what we're trying to do at Lincoln and all the other elementary schools, is to prepare our kids to be successful at the secondary level. And that aligns to our strategic plan in that students will have equitable access to learn, grow, and demonstrate success. So I'm going to walk you through 5 steps today, and that's just the history, what we're doing, why we're doing it, the challenge we presented to our school, the program, and then the results. So I'd like to say that what we've been doing at Lincoln happens in a lot of other schools as well, and we try to talk about all of these different pieces play a role in academic and student success. Project-based learning, we're in our 16th year. That was well before me as well, but we provide kids with real-world experiences. We've, over the past several years, tried to invest more in our arts programming for our kids as well, whether that's getting a stipend for a choir teacher to provide free choir for kids year-round. Our field trips, our PTO support. Our PTO does a ton of great events that provide great experiences for our kids as well. School-based events, we had, Boomer from the Pacers came out before Christmas break. We bring our grandparents out for a big reading event. And every Friday we do what's called Passions. It's an opportunity for our kids to learn about something outside the academic realm from a teacher, and we're actually starting our 3rd quarter Passions this Friday, and we've got fairy tales, there's basketball skills, foods from around the world, you name it, and the kids get to sign up 3rd through 6th grade and learn about those types of things. And you might be thinking, okay, that just sounds like a lot of fun, and but what does that have to do with actual academic success? And 2 years ago I came and presented about 2 different categories along with John Hattie. And John Hattie is a professor, and he has done a ton of research on what types of things have a strong positive impact on student success. And he's done over 80,000 studies. And you can see anything above 0.4 is considered to have a really positive effect on accelerating student learning. And this is something that, since I've been at Lincoln, we have been tied to and have tried to go back to it time after time to stay focused on and how we can continue to be successful. So when we look at that, right now we're focusing on these 4 things. There are a ton of things. There are 285 different characteristics and things that he charts. But 2 years ago I talked to you about teacher estimates of student achievement and collective teacher efficacy. And teacher estimates of student achievement, if 0.4, if you think about that, 0.4 has a positive influence. 1.62 is significantly higher than that. Teacher estimates of student achievement, what that's saying is a teacher understands where their children are at, their students, what they're capable of, what challenges that they might be facing, and then how to set good benchmarks for them to achieve. Collective teacher efficacy is the belief that you as an educator have the skills to help students be successful, to have a positive influence on them. And those are the two most powerful things, and as you can see, those have a lot to do with teachers. And today I'm going to focus on self-reported grades and prior ability, and how those play a role in student success, and how we at Lincoln are trying to help our kids achieve the next level. So, in general, if you've already seen them PowerPoint, but self-reported grades and prior ability. What a child knows going into school or into an experience directly plays a role in how much that they can learn, how fast that they can learn. It doesn't mean that they can't, but just what they know coming into it plays a huge role. Along that line, prior achievement. Teachers need to know what do students know, what are they capable of, and then how can I help them? And once we get those two pieces figured out, if we have a great teacher that's able to get this, we're going to build student confidence, and that comes under self-reported grades. And when students are confident, they know what they're learning, they know they can be successful, then they can achieve, and that obviously leads to self-reported grades. So one's tied to the other, and ultimately it comes down to prior knowledge and prior ability, and the big question is, well, how do we do that? How can we, if we only have them for 6.5 hours, increase their prior knowledge? And they're not reading books, at young ages. You're learning through experiences. Right? We can get to high school and college, and even upper grade, you can read learning. It's all about experiences. So how can we provide our students experiences that they may not be getting at home? So to do that, really to frame it much better than I just did, how can we create experiences for all CSA Lincoln students so that they can expand their background knowledge, build confidence, and use those skills to achieve success? So at our very first professional development meeting, I had been thinking about this, and I shared this exact slide with my staff. And this is my son, and he was a kindergartner at the time. And I'm like, all right, here are all the things that Calvin has been able to accomplish, a lot because of what I do and my wife. And he's done a lot. I mean, his first trip to the West Coast was my first trip to the West Coast, and that's mostly because I married up. But I went through all of these things that Calvin had been able to do. And we all were laughing, we had a good time, and we had some good jokes about it. And then I put up a PowerPoint slide of another student, and I put his picture up there. And this is a student that was a little bit older than Calvin. And I said, okay, now what's on his list? Now, as I went through in the previous slide, knowing your kids and knowing what they come from and what they're capable of and what their background is plays a huge role. And unfortunately, there was nothing on that kid's list. And so that room was silent as we sat as a staff. And I said, here's Calvin, here's this kid, both cute. What can we do for this kid that isn't happening because of at home? Like I said, it was silent, and then in that moment, we formed what was Beyond the Bell. And we all got down to work at that time and said, okay, what are we gonna do? Because we can only do it during the school day. And I can't even take credit for the name of the program. An art teacher came up with it, but we created what we call Beyond the Bell. And I said, okay, we have 4 expectations. I want it to be free to our kids. I want it to be accessible to our families. I want us to make sure that we're valuing staff, and it needs to be financially viable. It's no good to come up with something, not be able to support it, and then the next year we're saying, well, parents, I'm sorry, we can't do it anymore. And in that room, in February, we hashed this out, and groups hashed it out, and it is free. It doesn't cost our students anything to participate. It happens right after school. We also pay our staff members, teachers, classified staff members, to actually work the event. And we have created a budget and are able to stay within that budget each year. So our Beyond the Bell timeline, we started in the PD days back in 2022. We rolled out with cross country the following fall. We had 75 kids participate. And then as you can see, we go first and third and fifth quarters. And we just had our first quarter again this past year. We don't do the second quarter holidays. It's just way too crazy. And our registration forms will go out on Friday for this upcoming session. The process is pretty simple. Every time it's completely optional to our staff. We say, who wants to do it? This session I have a kindergarten TA who's doing it. My nurse did a baking one back in the spring. We create a program guide. It's sent out via Parent Square. Parents sign their kids up. I'm out of time. And then we get through the session. So anyways, here's some of the sessions that we do. And it's been I'll say this has been a great experience. There have been tons of opportunities for our community to get involved, and the kids have learned about a wide variety of things, including taiko drumming. This is a partnership that we have fostered, and now our students, they started today. They get on a bus, a BCSC bus after school, which takes them on their way to Fadria to this building, and they've been learning every week, and it's a whole new session this quarter as well, and it's free to our kids. CSA Fadria also participates in that. 17 Beyond the Bell programs in just over a year and a half. We've had almost 400 kids participate. 100% student placement, which means if you sign up, you get put in a session. We budget $2,000 for staffing and supplies each year for this. And our positives, when I look at our review, if you count Beyond the Bell and all the different ways that we get our kids involved in something, not like a school field trip, but whether it's a PTO event, all these different things, 90% of our students participate in at least one school event free. 81% of our economically disadvantaged students participate. We even created some really cool programs for our special education students in a smaller scale this past year because we wanted to make sure they got involved as well. Things that we need to improve upon, when I looked at it, the 17 students who didn't participate, 5 of them were multilingual students, so how do we get them involved? We've come up with some ideas. And then incorporate more community-based programming. That was fast, but I was out of time, and I apologize. So happy to answer any questions you have.
What's been your most popular event?
Great question. We've done something different almost every time. Cross country has been extremely popular. We've also done it the most. We're getting ready to folk dancing around the world. That's been one. There was a baking one that was really popular. Crafts, any type of small little craft activities. The 3-2-1, we had that huge giant inflatable planetarium. That was, we did the constellations. That was very popular as well.
Very cool.
So can you go back one slide?
Sure.
So the participation rate is phenomenal, and the whole program sounds wonderful. I am curious, so the economically disadvantaged, have you looked at what possible barriers are or why their percent of participation is slightly lower?
Great question. Yes, we have. Also, I think it's important to know that just because a student is economically disadvantaged doesn't mean that they don't participate in other things. When I looked at all of our lists, it was like, oh yeah, they're doing dance. You know, I know my kids. Oh yeah, they're involved in lacrosse. They're doing ice skating. So that's generally where I saw a lot of those things. There still is the whole transportation type thing. Yes, we're keeping them after until 4 o'clock. But we still have to have parents come get them at that point as well. So I would imagine transportation would be a piece of that. So this one was more concerning to me, is just how can I get more of my multilingual students involved? And we actually, after this data, Columbus East put on a really cool big event at their school last year where they had all these students presenting about their different countries. And one of our TAs drove the white bus, and we let all of our multilingual students pick out a friend, and they went with Mrs. Bozeman, and they went on over and had a great time during the day to go do that. So.
Yeah, so as far as time, the only clock you need to worry about is this one up here, because we'll kick you out after you're over. You're good. It's actually great what you've shown here, and I think when we think about best practices, the thing to me that stands out is how many of these are reused elsewhere, and it sounds like Fadria and you are kind of partnering together. Do we have, I guess this is a bigger question to more than maybe just you, but do we have elements of this that are creeping into other schools so that these good things you're doing can be done elsewhere?
So I was thinking about that question. I know that Schmidt Elementary hosted a evening, I don't know if it was a Thanksgiving meal or those types of things that they're getting events done. I know that as much as you can get done during the day is extremely important, because then you're taking away that whole transportation thing. I know that Dr. Parsons and Patrick Mahaffey have done everything from obstacle courses to they've had some bingo event nights as well. Southside, Jeff puts on a ginormous type carnival event that's almost hard to even kind of replicate. I think another great example is Smith Elementary with their VEX robotics. Those kids getting to participate in that, even go to Worlds, and have that sponsored by the community. So I just got the chance to present about Lincoln, but there are a lot of ways that these types of events are happening at other schools as well. So just off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Maybe just adding too for that, Mr. Major, I think with cross-country referenced here, Brett, you started in the fall of 22 with that, with 75. In the fall of 23, that became all 11 elementary schools with a league. So that got out. And then you mentioned VEX Robotics with Smith. I think Smith and Parkside both had teams in 22, 23. Smith really successful, went to Dallas and so forth. And then that led to this year we had 26 teams when we included the middle school. So things are being successful. We see a lot of interest in, have started to bleed into the other schools and created some organized programming.
That's a great point about the cross country. We did that, and now 450 students across 11 elementaries participated this past year in cross country. Really cool.
Yeah, I just want to echo, one, I think it's an amazing ROI in terms of a limited budget. So what you've done with $2,000, others, in general, $20,000, $30,000 would be expected. I think that the last thing, and I kind of echo Mr. Major, but I appreciate Dr. Roberts' statements, is how do we scale these best practices? And it looks like we're already, I knew we were doing it with cross country. I didn't know the robotics was this piece as well. I think we're just looking at how do we draw cohesive messaging. I know when my visit to Lincoln, I think it was last January, your whole system is built around a common message for the year and the theme. I think also looking at our programmatic approach across the elementary schools would allow for students that cross and are transient students to be able to immediately have identification and plug into those solutions. So, right, if Lincoln's calling it Beyond the Bell, but someone else is calling it, then all of a sudden you're going to require those students that are at the most disadvantaged to now have to relearn a process where we could create assimilation a lot better for those students. But that's outside of Lincoln, but I think at the corporation level, that's an opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Finley. Okay, next I think we have school-based health clinic presentation.
And on this, we see the screen coming up. Nick is getting one of our co-presenters up on Zoom. So Scott, I think, is going to be available that way. There you go.
Okay. Ms. Wilden, members of the board, and Dr. Roberts, thank you for the opportunity tonight to talk about an opportunity for a school-based clinic here in BCSC. I want to start with a document that's very familiar to all of you, and that's our strategic plan. The focus area for this work would be healthy, safe, and welcoming environments. And I would like to highlight the portion that says every learner has access to resources needed to thrive. And under programs and methods to implement student health clinics in the schools with the greatest need. As we began exploring this possibility, we were quickly able to identify that it did align with our strategic plan. We know that access to care is a need in many of our schools by the work that we do in those buildings. And we also, I was able to be part of 2 teams that visited clinics. So I visited a mobile clinic that is active in Northeast Indiana. We visited that clinic. They operate in different parts of the community. We were able to tour the unit and see how they operate. I also traveled with a group to Southern Indiana to New Albany High School to visit a school-based health clinic. And it has been in operation for a few years now, and they most recently added staff that wasn't eligible for full-time benefits to be seen in that clinic as well. And as we have done this work to date, I have a few people that I would like to recognize that have been a partner through this work. From Columbus Regional Health, I would like to recognize Lisa Crane, who is the Director of Healthy Communities, and Julia Badian, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Community Impact Officer for CRH. And they are both here in attendance tonight and online, participating virtually. Sarah Ward from Windrose Health Network, she is the Director of Community Health Affairs, and the CEO of Windrose is now going to finish the rest of this presentation, and that's Mr. Scott Roulette.
All right, thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight. Again, as she mentioned, I'm Scott Roulette. I'm the CEO of Windrose Health Network. A couple of fast facts about Windrose. We were established in 1996, so we've been around about 27 years. We've been a federally qualified health center since 2003. Last year, we served about 20,500 patients, and we delivered about roughly 67,000 outpatient visits. We've got 5 health centers currently, mainly in Bartholomew County and the town of Hope, in Johnson County, and also on the south side of Indianapolis. We also have 2 community pharmacies, one on the south side of Indianapolis and one in the town of Hope. We have roughly 26 medical providers, which is comprised of family medicine physicians, pediatricians, and also family nurse practitioners. We also have 7 behavioral health providers, which are mainly licensed clinical social workers and also licensed mental health counselors. We have a total of about 178 employees, and our budget last year was $28 million. Next slide. So just a couple of patient insights for you to tell you about us. As I mentioned, last year we served 20,518 patients. About 15%, actually came from Bartholomew County. 53% of our patients are at or below the federal poverty level. So as you can see from that, our patients are not wealthy. 38% are non-English speaking patients. And not coincidentally, about 40% of our staff are multilingual. And about 42% of our patients are basically identified as a minority. Race and ethnicity, this may be somewhat surprising in central Indiana, but not so unusual in the federally qualified health center world, but about 37% of our patients are identified as white, 13% identify as Hispanic, and 39% identify as Asian, which is primarily Burmese refugees and Punjabi Indians. From a payer mix, 60% of our patients are Medicaid or HIP, about 26% have commercial insurance, about 8% have Medicare, and 7% are uninsured, which I would expect in 2024 that number will probably grow significantly, because in 2023 we still had some of the Medicaid redeterminations happening. Basically, long story short, a lot of Hoosiers got kicked off of Medicaid in the end of 2023. Last comment about that, we were a Gold Star recipient in 2023 for our quality. That recognizes us in the top 10% of FQACs across the nation for our quality metrics. There's about 1,400 FQACs in America, so as you can imagine, being in the top 144 was quite an accomplishment for us. Next slide. So basically, we're proposing to do 2 models. We're hoping to have a clinic located inside one of your schools, which would be kind of a permanent clinic. We're also hoping to do a mobile clinic, which could travel from site to site. The drawing you see there is kind of a brief depiction of what a mobile clinic might look like. Basically, it'll have a check-in, check-out area, and also 1 exam room. We would hope to do behavioral health out of these models as well, either on site or through telehealth as well. So, next slide. Okay, the funding for this will primarily come through a HRSA grant. HRSA is a Health Resource Services Administration, and they sponsor school-based clinics across the nation. there should be a grant opportunity coming out in 2023 in which we would apply for with your assistance. And essentially that would fund the greatest majority of the expenses. The rest of the funding would come from patient service revenues. In other words, we would bill patients for services, and that would basically comprise our entire budget. So we're not asking for anything from the school corporation other than just basically in-kind services, utilities, internet, space. So it's a win-win partnership, I believe. Potential staffing is probably going to be a 3-man crew, probably a nurse practitioner, a medical assistant, and an administrative assistant of some type, quite probably also a medical assistant for efficiency. We're going to do primary care, acute care, sports physicals, immunizations, and some form of behavioral health. At WinRes, our behavioral health is primarily short-term counseling and interventional therapy. We typically refer things like psychiatry out to Centerstone, an adult and child, and some of our other partners in the area. Next slide. So as again I mentioned, there should be a grant coming out relatively soon. So we would submit that grant application roughly in the spring of 2024. They usually announce the winners of that grant more towards the end of the summer, possibly September. And then if awarded, we would have roughly 120 days to be operational and to see our first patient, which probably in this case, we would probably use our mobile unit to get that started and meet that 120-day requirement. So, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, what questions do we have?
I would ask, what is the actual deadline for submitting the grant application, Scott? It says spring 2024. What would be the final deadline?
I'm sorry, are you asking the dollar figure?
Sorry, the deadline date for the grant application.
Nope. So the notice of funding award has not been announced yet. I believe that they're waiting for Congress to pass the budget, but I do know that this has been identified as a priority by HRSA. So I think as soon as Congress comes to an arrangement, we'll have notice of that funding award. But as of today, there isn't one.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
So I got a few questions, not to hog the mic. I didn't get, what would be the operating hours and location of the physical clinic, and then the operation hours of the mobile clinic?
At this point, we would just start with the mobile clinic, and it would be operational during school hours at this point.
And then would there be a cost for services provided, and would there be a sliding scale for those that are more economically disadvantaged?
Sure, I will let Scott.
Sure. Sliding fee scale is kind of a core tenet of the community health center model. So we have a sliding fee scale available to all of our patients. It's based on the federal poverty guidelines. It goes basically from 0% of the federal poverty level, 100% at the federal poverty level, all the way up to 200%. And then basically it kind of slides off our charges. The vast majority of our patients are at what we call the minimum pay category, which means that they're seen for roughly $20.
And then, one second, just checking off my questions. And then would parents be required to take the child out of school to go to these clinics?
That's currently how the clinics operate. The student is released from school and the parents take them to the clinic.
And then we discussed about, access to care as a strategic alignment. What percentage do we have of BCSC's population that currently does not have access to care?
I don't have a percentage. We don't ask them for insurance information when they enroll or come into the nurse's office.
Okay, and the other question I had is just looking at how Bartholomew County is set up, and I know this is a joint presentation with Windrow, so I apologize putting you in a predicament. CRH has the predominancy in terms of access to data. So like my children go to Northside Peds. I know a lot of other children go to Columbus Peds or associated with the hospital. Would we not be partnering with Windrose, would they have access to all that data to be able to make conscientious decisions based on prior medical versus, like our CARH facilities they all have access to the same data at this point in terms of past history visits, visits to emergency rooms. So they could reflect on all that history going in for acute care.
I guess I'm a little confused on your question. Are you asking how we know if
Windrose
somebody?
versus the Windrose partnership versus CRH partnership, it seems like.
Okay, I'll let Scott explain that part.
Well, we've enjoyed a long-standing relationship with Columbus Regional. We don't necessarily see ourselves as competitors. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, CRH was instrumental in helping us get our Hope Clinic started back in 2006. I believe we work very well together, complementary. Some of our staff have access to Columbus Regional's medical records, so we can pull information from their ER or some of their specialists and so forth. So again, it's not perfect, but I feel like we work pretty well together for the benefit of our mutual patients.
And then I didn't get in the presentation, what is the annual cost that BCSC would incur once the grants expire in terms of retrofitting the on-site clinic and the upkeep of the mobile clinic?
Is there an expiration date, Scott, on the clinic?
On the grant?
Yes.
I believe the initial grant application is 24 months, but in all reality, these things are meant to be ongoing. If you demonstrate success, typically it's funded again. In specific regard to your question, we have 120 days to become operational. So through the grant submission, you have to kind of propose a timeline of what that's going to look like. So as we mentioned, our hope is to have a permanent clinic and also a mobile clinic. So in that timeline, we would probably propose that, within 120 days, we'll start with a mobile unit, and then we'll work with your staff to basically identify what's a realistic expectation for the permanent clinic.
And my last thoughts here was, so I worked a lot with Love Chapel with the food bank, right? And so when we were having a lot of food issues, food insecurity issues around 2012, around that recession, there was a lot of desire to push a lot of other food banks, right, rather than consolidate the resources. So I did some research, and I know you presented, I think it was in November, to the CCIC, is right now we have 6 urgent care clinics in Bartholomew County. I believe at least 4 pediatric offices. I checked with 3, they're accepting new patients, Medicaid as well. Urgent care offers day, night, weekend coverage, and they all use CRH's sliding scale order, similar to what Windrose, I talked with Windrose and Hope, right? They're using the same scale as well, very similar. I'm just trying to understand what's the opportunity of this solution that the other parallel paths aren't providing already to the community. I think that's one area where I'm not gathering the information. I don't, for example, like if I'm a student that needs a physical, or if I have an acute need, Prompt Med is centrally located. There's another one, I think there's another urgent care on 46. There's another one, Edinburgh, Windrose, and Hope. There's CVS, Walgreens, they all provide it. And then you have pediatric offices that are all accepting patients. Are we not better off pushing the students that need these services and directing them into the community where the services are already provided, rather than offering a parallel path at an incremental cost to not only to the facilities, but also just in terms of utilizing our locations? So I'm just trying to figure out what's the demand there. I know that there is people that don't have access, and I'm not being denial of that, but how much is there, and what are we doing to get them into the paths that already exist today for them?
I think that's something we can continue to work on. We do have plenty of students that fall within those gaps. We certainly want to get them into a medical home and where they can have continuity of care, but that is not happening 100% right now. So we want to continue to get those patients there that don't have barriers to care, that we can get to a primary medical office. And for those that don't, we want to have these clinics that fall under that federally qualified health center that have different opportunities for those students that are medically underserved right now.
Yeah, and I mean, as a foster parent, right, that was one area of the category that traditionally has problems getting access to medical care because they don't have the sustained relationships. I mean, and clunkiness of the government, you can make claims of whatever, but DCS does a very good job of like, here's your provider opportunities, here's the ones that are accepting Medicaid, here's the direction of resources. That's very similar to what we did with Love Chapels. Like, here, let's pool our resources, get them into the one lane. That's the only feedback I'd have for this presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Yep, Dale.
I'm wondering the timeline for when there would be a clinic in the school and the process for determining which school that clinic would be in.
We will look for an opportunity to serve the maximum amount of students with the greatest need, and we will work with Dr. Bozeman and that team as far as making sure that the area is ready to be fit for a clinic. But with the grant deadline, we have 120 days once we receive that, and that would be really hard to get that ready in that time frame. So that's why we'll start with a mobile unit and allow ourselves some more time to get that other clinic established.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think Logan hit a lot of the points I was concerned with. I too made note of there are 8 free or income-based clinics in Johnson, Jackson, and Bartholomew County. I didn't know why we had to put one inside of a school where we're already talking about concerns with space inside of schools. I know we've got in the spending that we just approved, or the plans to spend, we talked about wellness centers as what a wellness center was described to me did not include a health clinic. And so now I have a question, we're going to start with one. Is there only going to ever be one, or are we going to have clinics in every school? If we do, I think you will not only hear from me as a concern, but you'll hear from people in the public in general with primary care, acute care, sports physicals, immunizations, and behavioral health. That I understand the importance to try and help, but those are really parental concerns for a child. There are areas where they can go to get that expertise outside of a school, and I think that there's a little bit of scope creep for what we're trying to do from an education perspective into now providing health care for kids. I think this might be just a little bit beyond what we need to be looking at. So I would need to have a little more conversation around this so that I can help explain, not just explain it to other people, but have it explained better to me why this is important to us.
What other questions do we have?
I have a follow-up question. Have we surveyed any of our community or done a stakeholder engagement matrix in regards to the demand for this?
There is a question about access to care that is asked in the community health needs assessment that the hospital and healthy communities, they do that every 3 years. So that data is in there. I can't quote you that exact number right now, but I could go to that report for it.
I appreciate that.
One last real quick question. What is the total amount that the grant is going to be for the 2 years period? Dollars?
I think Scott didn't have exactly those numbers yet, correct? Because it hasn't been released yet from the federal government.
What is our expected cost for the 2 years then?
Our cost would be the, if we would develop space in the building, it would be that space and making sure internet and utilities and so forth are on. The operational costs fall to Windrose in terms of staffing and supplies and equipment. And
do we have a breakdown of that today?
I don't believe so. We don't want to have the cost yet.
Okay.
Kelly, could you go back to the, just about the first slide of this presentation? So in our strategic plan, when we evaluated needs, including the community health needs assessment that CRH does, we had an access issue based upon transportation and based upon the ability to get from home or school or whatever to medical facilities, regardless of how many there were. Some people can't get to those places. And so recognizing, scope creep or not, that we have students for a period of time in our buildings, if we had something that was closer to our buildings, it is not going to be us as a staff, or all of a sudden Mr. Finley's not going to be trying to staff or run a health clinic. The health clinic is to be in schools with the greatest needs, so we'd be looking to identify those with that largest gap of not accessing care. We have buildings that are in more need or greater need than others, and so the mobile clinic would go back and forth initially to schools with the greatest need, and then eventually put a clinic in a location, to Kelly's point, with the highest volume. So I'll just throw out a building. The danger of doing that, everybody says it's going to happen there, but Columbus North High School is right in the middle of a bunch of kids. And so if something was there, or if the mobile unit was sitting in the parking lot, we have 3 buildings, including St. B's, fourth, a private school that could access that clinic, and it would not be, again, our staff. It would not be anything except we are participating as a partner with Windrose or CRH or whoever else would be that other partner. CRH has been involved in these conversations. Initially, we were going to be working with CRH, thought that might be a good piece, but working through this and trying to figure out things with the grant, Windrose seems to be our best partner for this circumstance. So just trying to add a little context in terms of where things are with this conversation.
And I agree with all that said. I think the gap that I'm seeing here is you need a needs assessment that shows that you're more accessible than the alternatives. And that's what I'm struggling with when it comes to Prompt Med and others who have honestly better hours coverage and density coverage. I see the discussion around the mobile unit. I think that's a great piece. I don't see the in-clinic. I think it's going to be less available because you're going to be on a school hour shift, which isn't very favorable to working parents. And then you're also going to be probably in a location that's not accessible to everyone. It's accessible to some, where at least with the urgent care, they're spread throughout. And that's what I was wondering from a needs assessment. How are we looking at the solution that we're providing versus the alternatives already available?
Yeah, and are we going to treat a child without a parent in the room? No,
that's not something we can do.
So, and I'm using that to prove my point too, is regardless where it's located, whether it's mobile or at a school, a parent has to be there. So the parent is going to have to travel no matter what. To
Right.
Logan's point,
Probably save an hour or
works
two.
the first shift is not going to be able to get there. They're going to have to use somewhere other than a place located that closes at 3 o'clock. So that's why I think there's a lot more discussion that needs to take place. There's a lot more understanding that needs to be had so that we can prove that, this is necessary.
Yep, thanks. I would just like to say my perspective is a little different. I think if we can offer more, might as well try. And if it's one of those things that we don't get a lot of visits, then maybe it's true and everybody already has their needs fulfilled, and we try something different. But I appreciate that we are looking at ways to try to meet needs. I do agree, being in a school, when I take my kid to school, I have to go to the school, then I have to take them somewhere else, then I have to bring them back. There is a little bit of time savings, I think, that could be seen. And so I appreciate us being creative and looking for ways to offer things, knowing that it's never a guaranteed outcome, but we're at least trying to make something available. So thank you for being creative. Are there any, my question was, do you have any examples of school systems where something like this, mobile or in school, is functioning currently?
Yes, in New Albany and Floyd County.
Okay.
They have both high schools. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, great, thank you.
Shelbyville still have the clinic?
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts from the team? Great. Hey, appreciate the time. This is great.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. I think next we have school board member reports. So I like to surprise my friends and pick on a different person first each time. So I'm going to say Rich. Mr. Stenner, do you have anything today?
Thank you. The Business Advisory Committee was scheduled to meet, but it turned into an e-learning day. And so our Business Advisory Committee meeting is going to be rescheduled. In terms of Districting and Facilities Committee, did have a chance with other members of the committee to make a site visit to CSO Architects up in Indianapolis. The main concern that the committee wanted to address in that meeting was whether or not CSO Architects was ready to serve BCSC throughout the term of the building projects that we're looking at, whether or not they had the staff to accommodate the projects that we're thinking about. And I think at the end of the visit, it was clear that the answers to both those questions were yes. So that's a Districting and Facilities Committee update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stenner. Mr. Major, do you have anything?
Yeah, the redevelopment commission met early. The city redevelopment commission met earlier today at 4 o'clock, and they did a swearing in of all the voting commission members. They reviewed the garage budgets. They had resolutions for the finance and legal support. They also did a resolution for Second Street project. So that's starting to move a little bit more. They've got some other things that they have to do for the state in order to get their permit. They do have two other things real quick. They had a potential lessee that is pending for the Bachettos area, so there's some good news there. It looks like we'll get another restaurant here coming pretty soon. And on Monday, the 29th, anybody in the public that is interested in TIF, tax increment financing, TIF meeting on Monday, the 29th, 4 p.m. at City Hall. The Health Trust is the other one. So last week, thank you to Dr. Phillips for getting us into the Nexus Park facilities. I put a picture on my Facebook about it. The facilities are excellent, as you would expect. They're all brand new. You would expect something new to be nice, but I think the thing that was really wonderful was it was very efficiently laid out, how the patients enter, where the caregivers work. I think they did a really good job of laying it all out, and it should make things a little more efficient to operate the area and move patients in and out. So I think everybody will be happy with it. And again, thanks to Dr. Phillips for getting that tour set up.
Good. Mr. Bryant, did you have any updates? No. Nope. Okay. About Mr. Nell? No? Logan? Sure.
CCIC meets, I believe, in a couple weeks. Hall of Fame has identified the recipient. We will present that award at the February 5th board meeting with the reception prior, I believe.
Very good. Very exciting. Mom's the word.
Mom's the word.
Mom's the word. Mr. Grimes?
Two things. The School Foundation will meet tomorrow evening. And just a quick announcement for teachers that might be listening. There has been a new deposit put into Donors Choose through the School Foundation. So through the deposit and potential matching dollars, there is a fresh $30,000 out there for classroom project support. So teachers, please visit bcscfstars.org to get your project started and your wish list out there. From the Indiana School Boards Association, we're 2 weeks into the short legislative session. Approximately 750 total bills have been introduced. 113 of those are in some way related to K through 12 education, 67 House bills, 46 Senate bills. Last Thursday, I attended a webinar. Senator Linda Rogers spoke about Senate Bill 1, which involves a very proactive, comprehensive bill regarding the need to identify kids as quickly as possible that could benefit from more intense reading instruction, as the DOE has a goal of 95% of the state's third graders reading at grade level by the year 2027. And then also heard from Representative Jake Teschka, who spoke on House Bill 1219, Education Matters. It's an effort to deregulate and take some of the heavy-handed mandates, and I think the word he used was perfunctory, off of educators' plates. Things like the school improvement plan and other things that, in my opinion, are nonsensical and a waste of time. Lastly, I just recently contacted Representative Lauer to talk about House Bill 1376, which is an effort to put referenda items only on general election and municipal general election ballots. So 2 weeks in, and I think March 8 maybe is the goal of the legislature to get this short session wrapped up.
Wow, that's a lot, Mr. Krams. Okay. For the County Redevelopment Commission, I have been remiss in sharing some of the updates that are out there publicly regarding King's Hawaiian, but it is very exciting to see some businesses moving into the area up in Edinburgh, and how the Redevelopment Commission has been working through issues with them has been pretty remarkable. So we're excited to have some new business up there, generate some TIF dollars.
Good. All right.
Oh.
I'll jump into cabinet reports if you want me to. All right, thanks, Mrs. Wilden. Book review request does actually fall under the school board, but I will introduce it to you in terms of now that we have specific policies in place following legislative changes that occurred last spring that put policies had to be in place, and the law would also go into effect by January 1st. And so we do have a review request. The book is People Kill People by Ellen Hopkins. The book a complaint was filed over a year ago, and then we did have a committee put together who reviewed that book in March of last year and did return an opinion on that. And so that opinion is being appealed. It was Mr. Major has filed that complaint, was gracious enough to be patient as we waited through all the changes with legislation and the change in the policies and what was to be looked at and all those kinds of pieces. So we are to get it to you at the next available time, and so you have that information in front of you. In your packet was the original complaint, as well as the committee's review of that complaint. Given the policy that you recently passed, and you passed two of them that kind of deal with this particular topic. One would be selection of library materials and equipment, which was policy 2520. And then you also approved policy 9130, which is public complaints and concerns. And so once we get through the pieces of meeting with the building level and talking through things at the building level, and then if needed, a formal complaint is filed, and then a committee reviews that formal complaint, and then that recommendation comes to me, then that next step is to come to the board if the person wishes for that to be the case. So once it is, and again in our policy, anybody who chooses to go back and take a look at this, again, it is on our website, and it's public complaints and concerns, policy 9130. It does have a very specific piece about matters regarding school library materials. And it is that the board would review those to determine if the complaint and the book thus is obscene or harmful to minors from a school library as the terms are defined in Indiana Code. Indiana Code is very specific with that designation or that definition. Once the board has the information, you again review the request at the next public meeting, and then in order for the board to have sufficient time to appropriately review the challenge materials, you have, by our policy, you have to advise the complainant in writing of its decision within 60 business days of the public meeting where the materials were first reviewed. And so since that's business days, that is basically 12 weeks of time, taking into account any holidays and so forth that might be in there. And so that's where you are, is talking through, what next steps you might need to take in regards to this, understanding that you each have a copy of the book, I believe. You have all the other information, again, the complaint that was filed in the committee's report on that complaint and the book, and so we'll need to set up some time to review, converse, and then make a decision on what you wish to do with that book in regards to it being obscene or material harmful to minors, as defined by Indiana Code.
And I'd just like to make a real quick statement. Just before all the Facebook fun begins, and my friend Columbus Man has me being the world's most hated individual. So just so everybody understands this a little bit better, this is not a new review, as Dr. Roberts mentioned. This was reviewed last January. In April, it took a little bit of time to get there, but in April, Mr. McIver and I met, and during that discussion, we talked a little bit about the book, and my concern was really give an opportunity for parents to opt into a section of the library that might be above and beyond the age of their child. So in a high school, you have kids as young as 14 and as old as 18, possibly 19 years old. Those kids are all a little bit different in their abilities, and what I had focused on here was advising parents that there may be material that's not normally what they would agree for their child to see. I know that there's words that are said on the school bus, in the classrooms, in the hallways, on the fields, and on the courts, but if a parent knows that that's happening, they are going to most likely, hopefully, address it. So what I'm proposing is that we I will have no issue leaving that book in, and Mr. McIver can confirm this is what I told him in April last year. I have no issue leaving that book in the library if we have an opt-in section for parents to be made, I guess the disclaimer that says, what's in the books that are in that area may be graphic in nature. This book in particular, it is not, I know there's been a lot of talk about lifestyle choices that may be the concern for removal of books, but in this case, that's not the case. The case here is that it's extremely graphic nature. It describes in as vivid and vile detail the rape of a 9-year-old boy from a grown man on a camping trip. It happens on 2 pages. It's 2 pages that don't need to be in the book to tell the story. It's 2 pages that contain pedophilia and child porn. I do understand the book as a whole may be a good book, but those pages do not need to be in a school. My concern is, again, that we are not advising parents that there's these books that are in the library. And my hope is that you would accept my amendment to my challenge by pursuing an opt-in clause or capability for parents in the library for materials.
Okay, so I'm confused. Are you making a motion, or, because I do believe we've discussed this opt-in, opt-out throughout our work sessions, and that wasn't necessarily supported by the board. So Mike, can you help me sift through what the appropriate thing to do here
I
is?
made no motion.
Okay.
What I said was, if you are willing to pursue, which means you as the committee that's going to review it, I won't be part of that committee because I'm the challenger, right? It's a conflict of interest for me to be there. I'm going to vote to get rid of the book no matter what, right? So you all will have to look at this and determine, do you want to pursue an opt-in and tell parents that there's material in there that may contain, while it may not be the whole book, but there may be material in some of the books that contain graphic detail of pedophilia and child porn inside books, inside the libraries, and that they then will have the ability to opt in. So we would have to create a procedure that would update that. That would be the end result of a decision from me making the amendment to my document that I will not pursue this further to remove the book.
Okay.
If you pursue that.
Okay, so, and let me summarize what I think we would do next, Mr. McIver, and you tell me where I'm wrong. as a board minus Mr. Major, because he is the complainant, we can decide as a team we would like to pursue an amendment, and then Mr. Major would drop his complaint. Or if that is not supported by the majority of the board, we would review the complaint per our current policy.
I think so. I mean, I think you all really, those are two distinct questions in my mind.
Yep.
I think pending in front of you, there was a book that was challenged that went through the administrative review process, and that decision, that final decision to retain that book is what is being appealed to the board, and that question needs to be addressed. What I hear Mr. Major saying is that if the board would choose to take other steps related to its library policy, he may not be interested in moving forward with that particular challenge. But I think that, to me, that is a distinct question, that the two are certainly related, but they are different questions.
Okay.
From a review standpoint, to Dr. Roberts's point, the statutory criteria really do focus on the material as a whole, and that was the reason that the policy was crafted in a way to allow you all time to review the materials so that you can make that decision. So the next step on that review question would be some kind of target timeline for you to be in a place to make that decision. I don't know that that requires any formal motion or vote. You're bound on the outside by the terms of the policy itself. But if you all as a group say, we think we can get through it in 4 weeks, then we'll make that target, and everybody knows what their deadline is to go through it. If you say 6 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, I think that is the initial question, would be for you to have a general target of when you want to be through the materials. And then if there is any other discussion that you want to have around library materials, again, that would be something that we'd have to work into the agenda at an appropriate time in an appropriate way.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. So I will work with my colleagues to collect input on the appropriate timing to at least answer question 1 and then gauge interest in the option that Mr. Major has presented tonight.
And I've waited a while, so it's not, you don't have to be like doing this in the next 2 weeks, because there's other stuff too, so.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Yes, Mr. Nell.
At the risk of going down a rabbit hole,
We're there.
I am unclear how Mr. Major's proposal is different from Mr. Schultz's motion a couple meetings ago about having a special section library that was voted down. I'm not sure what the difference is. Are we talking about something different?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's the same thing. Yep. Okay.
That wasn't a rabbit hole.
Okay. Vision 2030 update.
I'll also turn to Dr. Phillips and Dr. Bozeman on information regarding Envision 2030. Some good news.
It's very exciting.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I think we told Mrs. Chrisman last week to just put Envision 2030 update on your cabinet reports and leave it there until we tell you it doesn't need to be on there. But this, there's not a lot to report tonight, but just briefly, last week we did receive confirmation from the county clerk's office that the window to submit signatures to add the 2030 projects to the next ballot, that window passed, and we did not have a petition turned into the clerk's office. And so, we wanted to acknowledge that and really thank you, the board, and the public for their support around those projects. Because we'll be able to move forward with these, we'll be able to provide these facility improvements, we'll be able to provide our kids with world-class facilities to learn, work, and play. Work hard and play hard, Mr. Finley, if he's still here. And because it won't be on the ballot this coming spring, we can do so without increasing the tax rate for any of the property owners in the BCSC area.
I'm going to call for a round of applause. This is a big deal, everybody.
And we probably, the first bond issue probably won't actually occur until probably early to mid-fall would be my guess based on timing. There'll be a lot of things that happen between now and then, and Dr. Bozeman and his team have been working feverishly in just the last month trying to put together what our next steps are going to be, pending that petition window closing. So Dr. Bozeman has some updates for you and at least a brief window into the next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
I'd like to.
How about now? Great, thanks. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to share, but I'll run through a few items that we're working through now and what the next few weeks look like for us and you. Before I do that, just a reminder, Parkside Elementary is scheduled to be complete in July of '24 under budget. Schmidt Elementary, you have one item in front of you this evening for a pre-purchase of HVAC, but the lion's share of the project for Schmidt will be going out to bid in the middle of or end of February. Those are outside of the Envision 2030 project, just as a reminder. We have a group that's been working on some things in anticipation. We plan to meet with you, board members, in an open public session of strategic planning on the 19th of February in the evening, and what we'll bring to you at that time is a draft schedule of phase 1 projects related to Envision 2030 for your feedback and review. Those will primarily be items on the front. First phase would be those buildings that have programmatic ties to them. So we're working on that now. We'll bring that to you. We'll meet with the District and Facility Committee, as Mr. Stenner mentioned, on the 1st of February. They help drive a lot of those things for us. So we have that coming up here in the next few weeks. Also appreciate Mr. Stenner's mention of CSO. You saw my note on Friday Notes on Friday of our partnership with CSO to be the primary architect through these projects as we continue. We've also reached out to the Cummins Foundation for a list of potential design architects for the 12th Elementary. That process is just getting started and will be heavily involved with the public review, similar to other projects in the community that have gone through the Cummins Foundation, and the board will be heavily involved in that as well. And then we plan to, on March 3rd, in the board meeting, bring to you again and publicly what that phase 1 schedule looks like. We'll have construction manager RFPs going out about that time. And just a reminder, all of our contracts, bid permissions, bid acceptances, approvals, all those things will come to you for, we'll be very busy over the next few years, so they'll be coming to you for all of your approval as we normally do. So happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of where we're at right now and what we've been working on and working towards.
Questions? Good. Now you have to get to work, Dr. Bozeman. Got lots of money spent. Okay, public comments. So a reminder of our process. Each person who is on this list will get 3 minutes. There will be a clock here that Nick will start with us, and please watch that as you go. I do try to stick to time. If there's a group here, you can pick a spokesperson. We only have a couple people, so that probably doesn't apply. Please don't use the names of individual students, staff members, or specific titles. It's kind of the same thing, and we want to just make sure we stay away from that. No cheers or jeers. Getting in up to a podium in front of a group can be a little intimidating, so we just want to make sure that the audience is respectful and it makes everyone feel welcome. And then another one that I would just wanted to remind people, it's not necessarily a time for the board to respond. So sometimes we get questions and it's like this awkward pause. And so it's more of an information to us for us to think about. If you do want, a response on any of your questions, we're usually available after the meeting or through email, phone call, et cetera. But we'd love to hear from you. And those 2 people I will call up as you signed up. First, we have Crystal Pumphrey.
Okay. So the question that I actually wrote down
Mr. Bozeman helped me answer earlier. I was just curious if I could ask a different question on a topic that you guys have already spoken about.
Sure.
Okay. The book that you guys were referring to. I read a lot of books, and a lot of them come with trigger warnings, so to say. 136 books is what I read last year. When it comes to, I guess, the parental aspect of it with students in the school, the pages he described can be quite a trigger for a lot of students. I believe if the options are to either have the book removed from the schools or to put it in a certain section where there is a warning label or the parents are, what is the word I'm looking for? Informed, sorry. The parents of the students at the school are informed that, hey, there is this section of the library that has books that have possible trigger warnings and graphic content and stuff like that. Depending on the parents, it may cause an uproar. It just depends, I guess. I guess my input on that is if the options are to remove the book or to get a special section in the library with the graphic nature of the book itself. I understand there are certain topics in it that could be discussed, but I feel like with that graphic nature of a book, it shouldn't be in the school, I guess. But other than that, I guess I'm done. Someone else can come up and talk. Thanks for hearing me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Humphrey. Kermit Key.
Hello, thank you for your time. First, I would like to thank Dr. Roberts for his service to our community and wish him the best with his future endeavors. I have appreciated his authenticity and transparency during the years he has served with BCSC. Second, I would like to voice my support for the school-based health clinic grants. If approved, it is my understanding that the clinic will provide primary care, acute care, sports physicals, immunizations, and behavioral health services. Considering the growing concerns with our community for mental health care, I'm excited to see what behavioral health services will be provided to our children. While some are concerned about parental involvement, we have had overworked nurses in our schools for decades. They continue to partner with parents to provide only the care their child needs with their permission. Despite wild conspiracy theories, I don't see that changing. Finally, I am disappointed with one of our board members and their continued push for a personal agenda regarding books in our school libraries. After they filed a written complaint to remove Ellen Hopkins' People Kill People.
Hey, Mr. Key, I feel like that's maybe a little on point and it may violate one part of our policy. I'm trying to make sure I'm staying in line.
Haven't named anybody, they named themselves.
Well, Mr. MacGyver, you want to give me any advice here? I just want to be fair.
You can let him go.
Okay.
I know he's talking about me. I'm still writing down what he's saying.
Okay. Well,
I do believe we all know who I'm talking
go.
about, but I'll keep it as vague as possible.
Okay.
A review committee recommended the book remain in our libraries. Unsatisfied, they filed an appeal so that the board must decide within the next 60 days whether or not to remove the book. I am disappointed because this same board member recently complained at a meeting that they and fellow members had spent so much time on this matter and very little time discussing Envision 2030 or other budgetary matters. Yet here we are watching them continue to push their own agenda, including hostage negotiations. They admit in the complaint that they have not read the book in its entirety, only the parts that someone else told them was offensive, but they appeal the decision of 5 other experts and peer reviews. They have hinted further action, including frivolous lawsuits, should they not get their way. Will a tantrum not suffice? I hope the community sees all of this as the radical actions of a political agitator with a personal agenda rather than the thoughtful concerns of a public servant. Actions speak louder than words. Anyone can claim that they're not an extremist or pushing extreme ideologies, but when they receive less than 50% of the vote, continue to be outvoted and deny the findings of a review committee and still refuse to compromise, then we can draw no other conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Okay, that is all we have for public comments tonight. Next on the agenda, we have our board appointments. So we kept this very simple. We assigned everybody to the same stuff they had last year. In most of these cases, it takes a bit to get to understand the role that you are to play and get to know the people that you're working with. So I appreciate the team willingness to stick with the groups that they had. And so that's the decision that you're going to see up here for us to approve tonight. So I can list through them. So BCSC Health Trust, Mr. Major will stay on that committee. Districting and Facilities, that's always a popular one. Mr. Stenner, thank you very much for participating in that. Diversity Leadership Council, that's myself. And Business Advisory is Mr. Stenner.
So like the recommendation, Mrs. Wilden, I guess for 3A through D would be then next.
Do I have a motion from the team?
So I move that we approve the board appointments for calendar year 24 as listed in number 3, letters A through D.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Graham and Mr. Major. I have a motion and a second to approve item 3, A through D. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Okay, so I'm going to list through those assignments on number 4. High Ability Broad-Based Committee is Mr. Nallen. Bartholomew Consolidated School Foundation is Mr. Grimes. Corporation Continuous Improvement Council, Mr. Schultz. Education Hall of Fame is Mr. Schultz. ISBA Delegate Assembly, Mr. Grimes, he does that one with vigor. I'm also glad that he has agreed to stay on that one. ISBA Legislative Liaison is also Mr. Grimes. IUPUC Advisory Board, Mr. Nallen. Classified Employee Roundtable is Mr. Bryant. Council for Youth Development is Mr. Nallen. District Wellness Council, Mr. Bryant. Bartholomew County Redevelopment Commission is myself, and City of Columbus Redevelopment Commission is Mr. Major. Those are items 4A through L.
Motion. I move to approve 4A through L for the calendar year 2024 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Okay, decision is to approve. Motion and second is to approve item 4A through L. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Okay, and old business.
I should point out that it's the IU Columbus Advisory Board.
Oh.
As of July 1st, I guess, but yeah, so we'll be.
Thank you, Mr. Now.
Yeah. It's exciting. All right, the next ones are my recommendations, Mrs. Wilden. We have requests for approval, as you said, for old business. Under that, we have quite a few sets of minutes. Minutes of the amended regular school board meeting of December 11th, 2023, executive session from January 8th, regular school board meeting from January 8th, and the executive session recently held on January 17th, as well as you had a set of Neola policy revision recommendations. We had spent quite a bit of time on a couple of policies we've already referenced here this evening. These were other ones that were based upon legislative changes enacted or adopted last session.
So I don't know how I want to do this. I want to pull out, can I pull out just policy 4121 for a small change?
Yeah. Yep. So do I have so then I would ask for a motion on everything excluding policy 4121.
So I will move that we approve item number 5, parts A and B, except for policy 4121.
Thank you, Mr. Nellen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
And I guess this is a motion. There was one part of policy 4121 that this is the policy update for background checks for support staff. And I got this correction from Dr. Pleak, so I think this is correct, that it should say, and it now says, that that the applicant would pay for any of the advanced or enhanced background checks, and so it wasn't clear which option we went with, but it's the applicant that would pay. So that's the only change. Do I move?
Yep.
Do I make a motion? So I would move that we accept that as edited, that the applicant would pay for the background check. Motion to amend policy 4121.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to amend policy 4121, made by Mr. Nellen and seconded by Mr. Schultz. Any questions from the team? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes. We now have
So
an
now I would
amended.
make the motion that we accept policy 4121 as now amended.
Thank you, Mr. Nellen.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. All those in favor of approving policy 4121 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Very well done.
Okay, thank you. Then we have requests for approval for new business, so starting with letter C now. A set of field trips and professional leaves that you had in front of you, school fundraisers, as well as claims and payroll. Claims for January 22nd are a little over $323,000, and payroll for January 12th was about $3.1 million. I'm also asking or requesting for you to receive bids, us to receive bids for mechanical HVAC equipment at Schmidt Elementary. Dr. Bozeman alluded to that just a few moments ago. A request to receive bids for roof replacement at CSA Lincoln. A request to accept a bid for field lighting. That's the football field track complexes at Columbus East and Columbus North. A conflict of interest for Mrs. Vogel. We just didn't include that in the packet the last time, so getting that caught up. And then an approval of a print management agreement that was also in your packet. So those are the issues we have. C through J.
I move that we approve all items listed under new business as presented by Dr. Roberts.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on 6C through J from the team? All those in favor of approving item 6C through J, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Dr. Pleak.
I request approval of the human resource recommendations as presented this evening. There are 11 of them, 2 retirements, 2 resignations, 1 appointment, and 6 leaves.
Thank you, Dr. Pleak.
I move that we approve the HR recommendations as presented by Dr. Pleak.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Major. All those in favor of approving the human resources recommendations, please say aye. Oh, would you like to discuss, Mr. Bryant?
Is there an item that gives us purpose?
Could we maybe say no to one of them?
That was your chance. He took it away from you, Mr. Roberts. Dr. Roberts. I get to call you Mr. Roberts when you're not the superintendent, right? Okay. Would you like to discuss, Mr. Bryant? Okay. All right. All those in favor of approving the HR recommendations today, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That one hurt a little bit. Okay. Dr. Pleak?
There are no initial ones, right? Yeah.
No additional.
So no additional. We always have number 8 on there just in case we have a special recommendation, but none this time.
Okay. Board input and review. I'm going to start with Mr. Grimes.
Lots and lots of good stuff going on. I was starting to kind of keep track through newsletters and the minute amount of attention that I pay to social media, but I've quite honestly lost track. So congratulations to all the students, BCSC employees, and all the extracurricular programs in all their recent successes. Thanks to the community members that are here this evening. Thank you to Mr. Edwards for providing updated graduation data, and really looking forward to the new team's approach. getting BCSC back on track in terms of graduation rate and reaching its full potential. Thank you very much to Mrs. Thompson for the information regarding the potential health clinic, Mr. Finley for Beyond the Bell and all the good things going on at Lincoln. Reminder to the community, C4 open house, Wednesday evening, 5 to 7:30 at North, door 15. And lastly, and I'll keep this brief, there'll be more time later, but thank you and congratulations to Dr. Roberts.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
I've not been around as much. I've been traveling a lot, but I do want to thank the presenters and thank the community members that spoke. I think Mr. Finley's best practice is one of the most scalable solutions that I've seen, and honestly one that reaches so many and has proven success in its scalability. I appreciate the update on the clinics and being able to serve, and overall I just appreciate all the schools have, I know Southside has for my children, pivoted to indoor recesses and all the logistical hurdles and nightmares that creates, especially at the elementary level when you're already juggling PE. So I want to thank all those teachers out there that are taking it day by day, trying to keep our kids active and moving, because that's helpful in their educational process.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
I want to give commendations to the following students for receiving scholarships at the Martin Luther King breakfast last Monday. It was a very cold day outside and inside the Commons last Monday morning. The scholarships are based on academic achievement and leadership, and they also include a matching scholarship for Ivy Tech or IU Columbus if the students enroll there. The student awardees were Kelly Hunter, Angel Afana, Elijah Murray, Malia Diet, Messiah Trapp, and Layla Sanders. And they represent 2 students from East, 2 from North, 1 from CSA New Tech, and 1 from Columbus Virtual Pathways. So as I was sitting there, I thought that also that reflects on the quality of BCSC and the benefit that students are getting from our multiple pathways. Oh, and also, sorry, I want to thank let's see, it was 1 administrator, 2 classroom teachers, 2 parents, and 1 librarian that took time from their own time to read the book under question and complete what I thought was a very thorough and well-written reflection of their thoughts on it.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant?
Mr. Finley has left, but I was going to invite him to that great big building just west of him, Copland Plaza, library. I'm going to invite him over to that. They can get together, collaborate, and come up with some things. Beyond the bell.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Mr. Major?
Yeah, I have two things. So the first one is a shout out to Chris Cooper, the wrestling coach at East that won his 300th meet. So 20 years ago, when he started coaching, I was actually on his coaching staff with him for about 3 years. So I do have a little bit of fondness for him and the work that he's put in over the last 20 years. And the key to that, one of the things that they've done really well there is growth over time. And the growth is not just in the young boys that are wrestling, but also in the young ladies that are wrestling now. And so there were 2 wrestlers, Eden Knight and Monica McMahon, that made it to the state wrestling tournament this last couple of weeks. And Eden unfortunately lost the first day of wrestling. Monica went on to place 3rd. And so just having seen the amount of work that goes into that sport, it is probably one of the hardest sports to do next to swimming when you think about just the endurance and the level of push you have to have internally to do that sport. The second thing is I want to congratulate the Southside RoboStings on a 2nd place robot performance at the Indiana First Lego League Challenge State Championship. And so I know that robotics programs here are growing. I know they're going to continue to grow because I know a couple of things. I know that robotics programs are going to be something that is going to really help out in the community here. So Just a big thank you to all the teachers and volunteers at each of the schools that make that happen. Thank you.
Don't even need to say my name, huh? I'd echo the comments of the board members that have preceded me. There are lots of folks doing a ton of good work. I'd like tonight especially to thank Mrs. Thompson. And Mrs. Thompson, could you pass along to Mr. Roulette our thanks for his part in the presentation this evening? It's an exciting opportunity, and look forward to seeing it as it fleshes out. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stenner. I know Mr. Major talked about robotics. I wanted to specifically call out Lisa Haynes, who was the main organizer for the event at Central Middle School on January 13th. That was really well done. There were over 60 teams of kids who got up really early on a cold morning to just work their butts off getting these robots to do some pretty cool things. So there's just so much behind the scenes. There's volunteers, there's parents, there's a lot that goes into that, and it was really cool to be a small part of that and see it all come together. Very well organized. I can't remember the sheriff. There was a guy that played the role really well as the sheriff, wrangling it all. There was like a Western theme. It was very cute. But anyway, that's what I wanted to. Who is it?
Eric Whitlock.
That's right, Eric Whitlock. Yep, thank you. And then I know that the topic of school closings and delays is kind of hot for some people. I just want to say I appreciate that we're conservative, and I for a couple of reasons, and I think it's because I recognize that kids need more than just an education from us sometimes, and so having a place to go, having meals, having all of those things, having the buildings available to students, if we can make that available, I appreciate that we try to do that even when weather can be tough. And then for a working parent, and I work in a manufacturing facility that's not always very flexible, I appreciate that it helps parents out too. So I know that some people struggle with those decisions sometimes, and I appreciate that we likely make exceptions where there are struggles, but it's a tough call. It really is a tough call. But I can see both sides, so, okay. So, we have a special board meeting next week here at 5:30. It will be very short, likely, but this team needs to hire a new superintendent because Dr. Roberts is leaving us, as we just approved. And so we are going to get some help with the search process. It is the intent of the board to have somebody in place by the time Dr. Roberts moves on July 1st. And there's a lot of steps that need to happen, and there are organizations that help with that. So we are going to work through who we're going to partner with in that process and approve them or review them, I guess I should say, next week on Monday at 5:30 here. Okay, and then we have a regular school board meeting on February 5th at 6:30. And again, Mr. Schultz had pointed out the Education Hall of Fame Award reception is going to be prior to that at 6 o'clock. So I'm looking forward to that. And that will be here in this building as well. And then our strategic planning session, February 19th at 5:30, will also be in this building. And we get to get a lot more in depth with the 2030 projects, which I think we're all excited about. So a lot of great stuff coming up here in the next few weeks. Okay, and with that, I think meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a great night.